Good morning. Today we are going to discuss the difference between bean and component from Spring Boot. In Spring Boot, both bean and component are used to define beans, which are managed by Spring container. And we use bean and component for different purposes, but technically both will create beans and available at Spring container. If you look at the definition for the bean, is a method level annotation means for the method level, we use this annotation as being the method is going to create an object or return an object. That object can be considered as a bean. And top level class, we would put the annotation as configuration or component. Anything will work. So it's a method level annotation. So programmer have more access to generate beans via method returning objects. If you look at the definition of a component, is a class level annotation. Only we can use this annotation at the tab level, class level only, no method level. You want to use component, that should be only for classes. So whenever the Spring launches, it will check for the all the components and create objects for those classes and make it available. For the beans, it will check all the methods which is returning those objects, create beans and make it available at the Spring container. Basically, Spring maintain all these objects when it bootstrap, when it's loading. So component can be used at class level. Here is the sample code. So I am using my service method in the app config class. The class level I have used edit configuration annotation, and my service is a method returning my service object of different class. So I configured as headred bean. Means this method is returning a object that I am considering as a bean. If you look at a component, I have used class level. My service is a class I am using as component. Yeah, we can provide the name to a bean or component. Simply what we need to do, when you say headred bean on the top of the method, you can use name parameter or argument. You can have your own name. Same thing for component. On the top of the class, when you say component, you can provide the name, any name, your own name. Scope. By default, all the beans and components can be assigned to a singleton scope. We can change the scope by using added scope annotation. I'm going to tell you those scopes in next video or in future. When to use bean or component. For the bean, mostly it's like a third party libraries that we use because we don't have access to those classes. Simply we create objects for those classes at the method level. Suppose I say I need a data source object or connection object. What I will do in the in the method, I will get the connection object. In that method, I will mark it as added bean. Means Spring is going to create that object and make it available, make it as a bean and available for us. The same thing component, our own classes, my own user defined classes, I will put component at the top of the class so that my classes can be considered as beans via component notation. So components we use for our own classes, beans for third party library classes when we're creating an object. Yeah, there's something called component scan. Whenever the Spring Boot, it will find all the classes, load the classes or load the jars, create objects for us and make it available for the programming for the execution. So being not needed to be the component scan explicitly defined in the configuration. Means when you put another configuration at the top of the class means we are telling Spring container that this class is the configuration class. Internally there are some beans are available. Please load. That is the use of configuration. Means telling the Spring that load these beans. For the components, Spring anyway scan and load all the components. Sometimes it cannot find few classes in a different package or parent packages. What we do, we use iterate component scan. There we provide the class location and everything, path and everything, so that Spring is going to include those components which are in different path, different package. Spring by default it's going to load classes from parent to child. If the class is in different package which is not like a linear way down, we need to go for a component scan. This is the snapshot. It's kind of iterating. Yeah, bean is like a method level, component is like class level, and we use edit configuration for bean on the top of the class. Component is like a class level, we put the component on the top of the class, and it's like method level, this is like a yeah, class level. And by default the beans cannot be scanned. By using configuration it will be scanned. Component will be scanned automatically. Beans we use for the external jars, external classes. Component that we use for services, repository services, and few other components. So these are the details we should explain in the interview. Thank you.